Good morning, NBT Nation. How is everyone doing here on a beautiful Saturday morning pop up live, pseudo pop up live? I sort of announced it on a couple NBT channels that I'd be doing something, but without a scheduled time. Just a quick reminder going forwards, NBT, we're going to be doing more scheduled lives where I tell you the topic ahead of time. I tell you the date and time ahead of time so you can attend the NBT lives that are of most interest to you. However, this morning I had some thoughts from a topic that I've been kind of chewing on, thinking about this whole week, and wanted to kind of unpack how do you measure the health of your training teams? How do you measure that your trainers are on track? And now this applies if you have full time, dedicated training teams in your organization, or if you just have a cadre of trainers who are designated to train and they do a bunch of other jobs. They're subject matter experts, whatever. So whether they're just the ones that do the training on a regular basis or they are full-time trainers, I'm going to give you five-ish areas to look under the hood, areas to monitor, areas to dig into, areas to measure, so that you can make sure that your training team is pointed in the right direction. Because if you can get them pointed in the right direction, then the odds of your investment in training in actually impacting the business go way up. Take care of your training teams, they'll take care of you. That is the subject of today's NBT Live. If you find topics like this interesting, of course, like, comment, subscribe, all the things. So, how do you make sure your training teams are on the right track, that they're pointed in the right direction, they're healthy, they're focusing on the right things? That is today's NBT Live. Spoiler alert, metrics, measuring content output, feedback surveys, all that. Good stuff. Don't get me wrong. Those are all good things. You should do all those things. That's not what we're talking about. These are the NBT recommended areas that you should look into. So, number one, the number one area that signifies you have a healthy training team. They're on the right track, they're focusing on the right things, and eventually you're going to start to see results on the business because of your training effort. The first big clue, the thing you should be looking for if you're a leader and you have a training team or designated trainers, is that training team focused exclusively on getting you results for the business, impact on the business outcomes that matter to the organization? Does your training team really talk nonstop about how do we move the business forwards? How do we make a dent in revenue, in profit, in efficiency, in talent retention? How do we move the needle on customer satisfaction? If your firm is focusing strategically on new customers, is your training team focusing exclusively on new customers and getting new customers, finding them, etc.? If your firm is focused on quality of care for patients, maybe it's a medical company, is your training team focused? Their training, are they focusing their training efforts on the quality of care and the consequent revenue, profit, efficiency, talent retention, net promoter score, customer, all the, is that what your training team's focused on? Because I can tell you, if you have a training team that's disconnected from business outcomes that matter at the big picture strategic level, the impact at a big picture strategic level, what the training team starts to do is do this. They kind of start focusing down. They start getting very focused on tactical level, compliance level stuff. They get focused on really kind of the small potatoes. And now all of a sudden you're spending all this time and energy in paying your training teams and pulling people offline for training and all this stuff, but you're at a compliance or tactical level. So the first area, if I was the leader of a company, I'm the CEO of Blauman Incorporated, and I want to measure the health of my training team. I want to get a hint, a signal, a clue that my training team is on track. Are they talking and focused exclusively and really living in results and impact for the business? Now, as the leader, of course, I have to give them that opportunity. I have to open access so that get the they know what the strategy and impact and metrics that matter for. I have to create an environment where the training team is brought into those topics. But if your training team itself is not really thinking about, looking at, focusing on creating content, creating programs, really obsessed with top line metrics, top line results, and impact because of the training, they will be down in the weeds, compliance focused, not a healthy situation at all. So that's the very first thing to look at. What do you think, NBT Nation? Leave me a comment here in the chat feed. If you watch this on a replay, be sure to comment there as well. Results for the business, impact on the business, a good, healthy training team, or even just a cadre of designated trainers. That's the number one thing you got to look for. Because if they're thinking big picture and they're connecting the dots from their training to your big picture, you're going to get better results on the big picture. If they're thinking small potatoes and everything they do is down in the weeds and in the trenches, that's what you're going to get. So, no, don't get me wrong. You can have strategic level training that includes how to do the down in the trenches work. Yes, but it should always flow up to and tie to that strategic outcome. Secondly, how do you judge the health of either a dedicated training team or designated group of trainers who do the training on the regular basis? How do you measure, monitor the health of that? If you're the leader of the company, what are the red flags you should be looking for? Number two, I wrote some notes, so bear with me here. I should probably have my reading glasses on, NBT Nation. Is your training team ruthless about feedback and improvement? Is your training team ruthless about feedback and improvement? Do they live in a space where they are openly asking people, what didn't work? What needs to be improved? How could this be better? How could this be more comprehensible? How can we help you learn, retain, and use this information? How can we make it easier to find the information? How can we make this information more real, relevant, relatable? 3 of the 6 pillars of interesting and effective training. How do we make it more useful for your day-to-day life? All of these different things. Trainers, your training team should be ruthlessly seeking that out. Feedback surveys, asking in the sessions, talking to frontline managers, getting feedback from frontline managers, self-reflection, peer review. Trainer A is delivering training. Trainer B, who never even gives the subject, never ever delivers that training. They should sit in on that training once in a while and give some honest to goodness feedback to that trainer. Do the trainers have debrief processes? So when the training is done, they are getting together as a group and really going through in a logical, methodical way to say, this was good, this was bad, and they're really unpacking their own performance. Do they have a debrief process on the team where they have to report out, I did these trainings and these were my realizations, lessons learned, etc. Your training teams should naturally, if they're being led by the right training leader, they should naturally seek out to improve. Having said that, if you're a leader of an organization and you're like, am I getting my money's worth for all the time, energy, and money we pour into training? That is the second area to look at. Is that training team ruthlessly seeking out that feedback, good and bad, but certainly the room for improvement? Do they have processes to get that information? Do they have processes to analyze that information and feedback? It's not that they just get a one-on-one comment from somebody and they go, well, guess we got to change everything. But they have like a defined roadmap of how they measure the feedback and they look for trends. They monitor from session to session to session or group to group to group or whatever, program to program. Now we're seeing a trend. Hey, you know what? That trainer that teaches that topic is getting tired. We can see it because the satisfaction levels are coming down. Or that trainer struggles with topic XYZ. We can see it because of our evaluation process. They're really great at these other 5 topics, but topic number 6, they need some coaching. That's where ruthless pursuit of feedback. Those are some of the areas where you can start to see improvements if you have a training team that lives in that environment. All right, MBT Nation, we're talking about how do you monitor, check, get under the hood of the health of a training team. If you're the leader of an organization and you're wondering, are we really getting our money's worth for our training investment? These are some of the areas to really dig into and ask questions. And I'm unveiling the dirty truth of the world of training. Number one, does that training team live, focus, eat, breathe, and sleep, impact on business results? Everything they do is focused around that. Number two, are they ruthless about seeking out feedback and improvement and setting up improvement processes? Are they ruthless about it? They're always evaluating. How do we do it a little better each and every single time? Number three on the list, it's going to be a controversial one for the trainers out there. Trainer to trainer, if you're watching this live, this one's going to sting a little. Is your training team focusing on learning over dogma? Is your training team focusing on learning over dogma, over arguments of should we use Addy or should we use Sam? Should this be synchronous or asynchronous? Oh my gosh, should this be virtual or in the classroom? Well, we use this model of design. We use that model of design. No, this is how, we need to do more micro learning. No, we need to do more immersive learning. Oh, we need all of these learning. Adult learning styles are the way to go. No, no, no. Adult learning styles are garbage, and those aren't true. No, Ebbinghaus. Well, Ebbinghaus is a cool guidepost. Oh, Ebbinghaus is a bunch of trash. We need to. All of these arguments, none of that matters, really, folks. And this is where it stings trainer. At the end of the day, are people in the company learning? And is the company getting better? Yes or no? That's the litmus test of our success. Are people developing in their roles, getting better, faster, quicker, making less mistakes, finding more success, closing more deals, taking care of more patients, making less quality errors? Are they getting better at what they do? And is the business getting stronger? That's the litmus test. None of the background trainer stuff that you can go online and argue about until the end of time. Is Addy still relevant? Who cares? It's the results that matter. Now, don't get it twisted. You need all that trainer stuff. You need Addy. You need a process to get to the outcome, of course. Here at MBT, we always preach that. In fact, if you just hang on to point number 5, we'll get back to the process part of it. So don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that adult knowledge of how adults actually learn and all of these systems and all of the frameworks and thought processes and research, I am not saying it's not important. It is very, very important. But if you want to measure the health of a good training team, you are looking at a training team that eats, breathes, sleeps. How do we get better at helping people learn in our organization? That's what they talk about when they're in meetings with frontline managers, when they're talking to end users and getting feedback, when they're sitting down with senior leaders, when they're having team meetings talking about what is the next thing we can work on, what is the next project, what is the next piece of training and learning content. What they're really focusing on is how can we help the organization learn versus campaigning and being rigidly adhered and fixed to some sort of learning dogma. And then that spills over into their conversations with other people. I hope as you watch this NBT Nation, you're kind of hearing what I'm saying. If you're a leader of an organization and you're looking at a training team and they seemed more concerned with championing championing, is that the right word? If your training team seems more focused and interested in spending more energy on being zealots and advocates for some sort of training methodology to the rest of the organization, that's not good. That's not a sign of health. What your training team should be zealots to the rest of the organizations and passionate and fired up about, are people learning? Yes or no? Are they getting better and developing and growing versus, oh, no, 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 we should use this process or that process. Oh, we should believe this way or that way. So hopefully this is making sense. Again, if you're a trainer watching this piece and you're like, Adam's saying that we don't need any of that stuff. That's not true. You need the Addy, you need the way adults learn and all that kind of stuff. Chunking and scaffolding. You need all that. But what I'm saying is a healthy training team really focuses on the point there that the goal is learning, not proselytizing a certain learning dogma or practice or methodology. You're not there to preach the gospel of Addy. You're there to help people learn. And if your training team communicates, speaks, and talks about helping people learn, they're probably healthy. They're on the right track. They're pointed at the right things. If they're preaching the gospel of fill in the blank learning thing, they might not be on track. They might not be spending the time that you want them to spend. So I got a little soapboxy there, got a little preachy, got a little animated. Let's move on now. Number 4, the fourth area to look at if you're the leader of a company and you want to make sure your training teams are healthy, good, they're focused on the right things, they're pointed in the right direction. Number 4, I call it connection. Are they connected throughout the organization? And there's 2 or 3 key groups. Are they connected to senior leadership? Are they connected to field level managers? And are they connected to end users? Training teams that have open time with senior leadership, structured time with senior leadership, open door policy. They're constantly involved in discussions. They're constantly being invited to meetings with senior leadership. If that's the sign of a healthy training team because the senior leaders are inviting the trainers into the discussion. It's a hint that your training team has earned the right to be in that room. They've earned the trust of the senior leader. And that's really good. You want the senior leader to trust the training group to be able to be part of the process of moving the organization forwards. If you have frontline managers, good, solid connection. That's the sign of a healthy training organization, healthy training structure, because now you're getting more feedback. You're getting the 6 pillars of interesting and effective training. You're starting to tick the box because you're getting feedback directly from the frontline managers. Frontline managers are going to tell you about the tactical level challenges to implementing the big picture strategy. So if we go all the way back to number 1, results and impact for the business, the frontline managers are going to tell you, here are the things that are stopping us from impacting those top line metrics. And training might be one of the responses to those roadblocks. Not always. Training is not a solution for everything. That is one of the hard truths becoming a no boring trainer. Training is not the solution for everything, but by talking to the frontline manager, you might find a roadblock at the tactical level that is preventing that strategic outcome. And then now you can lever the use of training to overcome that obstacle. So a healthy training team should have really good networks of frontline managers. And then lastly, of course, the end users. If you're end users, there's a couple things to look at here in the term of connection. One is, of course, feedback, getting ideas, getting honest to goodness feedback about satisfaction surveys and, hey, it'd be really cool if we did this and that. And if you had a topic that helped me with this, or if you changed the nature of that session to be, change your exercise to do this instead to be more interesting, all feedback, really good stuff from the end users. The other thing to look at kind of under the connection bucket for the end user to the training team, what is the strength of relationship when the trainers walk into the room, do, does the trainer get a high five, or are people sitting their heads down because they have to endure another training session? That's a pretty tough litmus test. Are the trainers celebrated by the line users? When you're walking through the hallway, do people high five your trainers, or do they put their head down and mumble hello and keep walking? Do people send your trainers thank you notes and words of encouragement, and do they send emails to the trainer's boss to say, hey, I was in blah 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 session, it was really great, it was really helpful, I wanted you to make sure you knew that Bob or Sally did a great job as a trainer? Those sorts of things. It's not about building up the ego of your trainer. That is a litmus test that your training is healthy and on track and going in a good direction. If the end users, broadly speaking, go, hey, that person cares, they really care, they try really hard to make the training effective and useful, and they go out of their way to really help put together things that they hope and they think will be useful to us, the frontline user. They try their hardest. Not everything's a victory. Not every session's great. Not every part of every session's perfect. But on average, that trainer really tries hard. If your end users are saying that and doing that and behaving that way, high five, handshake, good to see you, all that kind of stuff from the end user to the trainers themselves, that's a pretty good sign. And you're smart enough as a leader to read the vibe there. Are people putting their heads down? Oh God, we got to go to another session. Are they never talking to those trainers? Are the trainers not getting invited out to after dinner drinks, or, hey, are you coming to the company picnic? I sure hope to see you there. That's a that's a either a good or a warning sign to look at. All right. Connection. Are your training teams connected? Senior leaders, frontline managers, end users. Healthy training teams naturally are people that are deeply connected throughout the organization. Those trainers' names keep popping up in discussions, comments, emails, Teams messages. They are, every time you look around, they're talking to somebody new. They're in a different meeting. They're part of different teams working on projects. Those trainers are deeply embedded and connected and the connective tissue throughout the organization. That's a good sign of a healthy training team, because they're using that to improve the quality of their training, to impact more business outcomes, to get better feedback, to ruthlessly improve, all those things. So there you have it. Good, healthy training teams. There's one more to come, by the way. I said that wrong. There is one more to come. So don't jump off quite yet, MBT Nation. Number one, results for business. A healthy training team focuses on impact for the business above all else. Number two, ruthless about feedback and improvement. That's a excuse me, training teams that are ruthless about feedback and improvement, they on average are very healthy, in my opinion. Number three, they focus on learning over dogma. Learning over dogma. Training teams that are just obsessed with helping people learn, remember, and apply. That's a healthy training team. Number four, connection. Senior leaders, field managers, end users. One more sign of a healthy training team. And this does come from the hard truths of becoming a no boring trainer. One of those 20 hard truths is design, speed of design is more important than you think. Speed of design. That's from the Hard Truths of Becoming a No Boring Trainer, which is an ebook that is available for trainers, training leaders, and leaders of organizations with training teams. Either one, if you're new to corporate training, if you've pivoted to corporate training from the education side, if you're a trainer today and you're just not happy with the results you're training, people bored, you get more yawns than results. The training's okay, but you know it could be a lot better. Grab your copy of the ebook today. It's 60 pages, 20 hard truths, 15 infographics, whole bunches of information, experiences, and stories. It's a PDF you can download. You can get it at noboringtraining.com, and it costs less than a cup of coffee. So there's a little plug for the ebook, Hard Truths of Becoming No Boring Trainer. But one of those hard truths, NBT Nation, gosh, sound like a used car salesman. One of those hard truths is talking about the speed of design. And I'm putting that on my list as number 5. My list of indicators that you have a healthy training team. How quick are they to get a request for training or an opportunity where maybe training makes sense, no matter where that comes from, and they can quickly, effectively, and rapidly, which I guess is quickly and effectively put together a proposed training response that is digestible, that is focused in on whatever that issue is, plus the strategic needs of the organization and the big picture top line metrics. They can connect the dots between the two. They are comfortable presenting that back to the senior leaders. They're comfortable presenting that back to frontline managers, but they can put that together very, very quickly and effectively. Those designs are the proposed solutions. I'd recommend an in-person workshop, or I'd recommend a full-blown program, or a virtual session, or e-learning, or a micro-learning campaign, or let's do some explainer videos, or whatever the training response might be. A healthy training team can get that response back to the requester very quickly, very effectively, and laid out in such a way that the end user understands what that workshop, the end user can look very clearly at that proposal and say, here's the problem I'm having, and I can see exactly how this is going to affect that problem. I can also look at that proposal and see very clearly how that flows up to the big picture needs of the organization. I can see the nuts and bolts. It's going to be in person, it's going to be virtual, it's going to be an e-learning module, it's going to be this, it's going to be that, whatever. I can see all the mechanics. Maybe there's even a thrown together, blanking out on the word, not demo, prototype of some of the content that would go in it. Not much, but just a little bit to get a taste. There's a clear roadmap of who would attend that session, what is needed to launch that session, the time to build the content, the investment to buy software, the investment for travel, time frame of when this training response can actually happen, how we're going to measure the results of this training effort, how we're going to document it, the communication plan, who the instructors are going to be. All that stuff is in a very clear 1 or 2 page document, kind of a quick summary that anybody from the C-suite to a frontline user could get that, read over that design and go, that's what we want to do. Or they could read over that design, and then it begins a discussion back and forth between the requesting party and the training group. Well, I really like this, but this area over here, can we tweak this? Can we change this? And then you're going back and forth. To be able to quickly put those designs together, I can tell you over a lot of years, don't forget, NBT Nation, I'm in the trenches too as a training and development manager myself. I'm in the trenches right there with you day in and day out. And I'm telling you, the healthy training team does not have to sit there for 20 years to come up with what I just described over the course of the last couple minutes. A healthy training team ought to be able to do designs of training responses, just a quick 1-page summary of here's our recommendation. That should be like bread and butter stuff. That should be like a very highly tuned skill. Because I'm telling you, once the people in the organization start coming to the training team for responses, the more quickly you can put that design together and put it back in the hands of the requester, so you can then begin the partnership of how we move forwards. You can then begin the iterative process of, well, is this going to be something the requester does and they deliver the training? just using the trainer's outline? Do you do it together? Does the training group run off and do the training and the requesting group doesn't even show up? Whatever, you can start the process of figuring all that out. You can start the process of planning. Well, if this is going to take 3 months worth of work to put this all together and $100,000 of expense to make it happen, should we do that? How are we going to do that? Do we have to get funding from inside the organization? Do we have to deal with people's time off? Do we have to go to work with another group to get not only approvals but support to book all this travel? I mean, it all starts snowballing from there. Once you get that roadmap agreed to, now the trainers can go off and put all the content together. But they have now a very clear roadmap and guide to follow so that they build the content that meets the design, and the design solving the actual problem and big picture business stuff. See how this fits together? A healthy training team can do everything I've described over the last 5 minutes or so. That it's like bread and butter. It's just they are really good at doing that. They are really good at just getting everything down to the brass tacks. And another reason why I say that, and I've made this mistake 100 times. A requester comes in and says, "Hey, we need a training on blah, blah, blah." Not a lot of details. And I, Adam, have made the mistake of saying, "I'll figure it out as I go." I'll start designing, or I mean, developing all the content. I'm an Addy guy. We'll start developing all the content. We'll start putting everything together. And while I'm doing that, I will continue the conversation with that person who requested the training. Well, you know how that's going to turn out. I'm going to have to change my content 100 times because I didn't have a very clear design to start with. And when I get down to, I'm all ready to go, then all of a sudden the thing's going to change, because then you have one more conversation with one person and they go, "Well, yeah, but what if?" If you have a solid design in place, the odds of, "Well, yeah, but what if?" Yeah, you know what? We'll get that next time, because the design, we're really kind of heading in this direction over here. It's not to say you can't tweak it, but we don't, the good idea fairy shows up at the last minute. Here's the design that everybody agreed to. It was communicated throughout. We're not adding in this big, huge, we're not changing everything at the last minute. So now you get your training done that's far more effective, far more interesting, far more cost effective, far more organized. And then the last reason why I think healthy training teams should be able to do those designs very quickly, the better you get at those, then when you get time with the senior leaders from all the other points we've been talking about this morning, and the senior leader says, "Hey, what do you think about training to do blah, blah, blah?" You can quickly get that proposal back to them, quickly outline everything, and the odds of them saying yes start to go way up, because you just have this quick little summary of what the training response is going to be. And they can look at it and go, "Yeah, that makes sense to me." And not only do you get invited back, not only does that training request tend to get a yes, and you go off and do that, they tend to keep inviting you back to the conversation for other topics. And then you get more opportunities to see where training fits in. So there you go, NBT Nation. Real quick here at the end of wrapping up this NBT Live. What are the signs of a healthy training team? Whether it's a dedicated team of trainers or a cadre of trainers that do a bunch of other jobs, but they're the ones that do most of the training in the organization. What are the signs of a healthy team? One, they are focused on the results and impact for the overall business and strategic level. And they're looking at business, big picture, top line metrics, revenue, profit, talent retention, net promoter score, stuff like that. Number two, they are ruthless about seeking out feedback and improvement opportunities. And they have all sorts of things geared around this idea of how do we improve our training. Number three, they are more focused on learning than learning dogma, learning politics, learning ideas and concepts. They just want people in the company to learn. They'll worry about all the background stuff. And they're learning about stuff they need for their job, so the team being trained can have better job satisfaction. They're happier, they're more effective, they're more productive, whatever. That's the kind of learning the learning team focuses on, not promoting learning dogma. All right. Number 4, they are connected to senior leadership, frontline users, and frontline managers. And then lastly, they are really good at quickly putting together training responses. We call it a design, but the proposal of a training response. It's just a quick little one pager that outlines what the training's going to look like. And they're really good at gathering the information they need to put that together, getting that put together in a reasonable time frame, and then getting it back to the audience, and then walking the requester through that proposal so the requester goes, so that you can start the process of partnering together and either moving forward with the training or not. Those are my signs. Those are the NBT prescribed signs that you have a healthy training team. You have a healthy training setup. There are other ones out there, of course. Like I said at the beginning of this NBT Live, of course, you need to be looking at, how many new training things are they producing? If their sole job is to build e-learning and they're putting out one e-learning module every 5 years, it's probably not enough. If they conduct classroom-based training and they haven't built a new training module or a training exercise or a training handout or a training aid of some sort in the last 5 years, that's probably not enough. So you got to look at activity. You got to look at, are your trainers going out to learn and they're increasing and growing their skills? Are your trainers looking at new technologies without getting seduced by the bells and whistles of new technology? Are they appropriately exploring how they could use technology to help people learn, as opposed to let's go buy more fun stuff? That's a sign of a healthy training team, that you have a training structure in place, that you have a leader of the training team with clear standards that you for the team, that you have standards for the training itself, that you have trained the trainer programs. Your trainers are like, commenting, subscribing, and following NBT across all social platforms. There's a lot of other areas you can look at, but in this NBT Live, we looked at 5 key areas that really, to me, signal a healthy training team. Dive in, NBT Nation. Let me know what you think. Leave me some comments in the comments field. If you watch this on replay, you can do the same there. Be sure to visit noboringtraining.com. That's where you can find the ebook, Hard Truths of Becoming a No Boring Trainer. That's where you can find all sorts of other useful tools, most of them free, some of them for sale, to help you get training results, not yawns. Get results, not yawns. Less yawns, more results. All that kind of fun stuff. So visit noboringtraining.com. Be sure you subscribe to the channel. Give this live a thumbs up. And of course, you can find NBT across all social media. I don't often talk about this, but yeah, you can find NBT here and across all sorts of other platforms. So anyway, hope you have a great rest of your Saturday, NBT Nation. More scheduled lives coming in the new year. Lots of other stuff coming in the new year that I'm excited about. Thanks so much, everybody. Hope you have a great rest of your day.